Well, hi everyone. I'm Daniel Williams, Senior Editor at MGMA and host of the MGMA Podcast Network. Today, I'm speaking with one of our upcoming keynote speakers, Rob Lawless. He's the founder of Rob's 10K Friends LLC, and he is one of our keynote speakers at our upcoming MGMA Financial Conference that's in April 13th through the 15th in Washington, D.C. So I know that's going to be a great event and a great session, but Rob has done something pretty interesting. He has embarked on what is an incredible journey to meet 10,000 different people for 1 hour each. Unfortunately, I'm not going to count. We're only going to be talking 30 minutes here, so maybe I'm half a person. I don't know how Rob calculates that. We can figure that out. But his keynote is Discover the Untapped Value of Human Connection. Rob Lawless, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. Good to be here, and very excited for the event next month.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've heard this question 10,000 times, but where did this idea come from? This meeting 10,000 people and talking to them for an hour each?
Yeah, I think, and I don't know if I was able to put it into words until I got further along in the project, but I have this belief that every human interaction, no matter how brief, has the potential to change your life. And I've always been a people person, and I think there's so much value that comes from it. And I saw it in a very authentic way when I was a student at Penn State University. Both my older siblings went there, so I kind of knew what I could get involved with once I arrived on campus. And I hit the ground running. I raised money for the fight against pediatric cancer. I joined a fraternity that restarted. I gave tours to prospective students. I would do Habitat for Humanity trips over spring breaks. I was a homecoming captain, and my brother was a junior when I was a freshman, but by the end of freshman year, I knew more people on campus than he did. I was just that type of person.
Mm-hmm.
And I studied finance and minored in accounting and entrepreneurship. But when I graduated and look back on my time at Penn State, it's not my degree or the classes that drove the value I got out of that experience. It was the people that I met. And I think I didn't anticipate the contrast of connection from school to connection in the real world. It felt in school it was so authentic and easy, and in the real world it had to be so agenda driven, and I wasn't ready for that shift. And it was a struggle for me to go into that environment. I started doing consulting for Deloitte straight out of school. So you go from like this great college campus into a cubicle, you're staring into Excel sheets for 12 hours a day. And that was tough for me. And I wanted to get back to a place of just meeting people without any agenda, because I still believed there was a lot of value to it. It didn't make sense to me that people weren't doing this in the real world. So after leaving Deloitte and going to a tech startup and feeling the same way, I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to meet 10,000 different people. And I was just talking to someone last night, and they said, well, what's the goal with the interactions? And I said, there is very intentionally not a goal. Because I think if we try to get somewhere with someone, we're closing off all the other value that can come from that interaction. So curiosity drives a lot of what I do, in the sense that I'm very curious to see if you do the act of meeting 10,000 people one-on-one for 1 hour each, what does that blossom into? I'll only be able to tell you in hindsight, but the uncertainty of that and the excitement of that is what drives me.
Yeah. So you were at Deloitte, you talked about that. I know that they definitely analyze and measure things. So with your 10,000 interactions, an hour each, how do you calculate that? Do you have a little egg counter there? You set the timer and it's ticking beside you the whole time? And if somebody gets up and goes to the bathroom or leaves you for a second to answer a phone call, does that stop the ticking time?
It is not that intense. So it's everyone knows that they're coming into this experience. So if I am at a graduation party and I'm talking to someone for an hour, I don't hit the timer and say, okay, you're now part of this thing, I'm doing this.
Right.
It's people know beforehand, because I keep track of their stories on Instagram. And my account is Rob's 10K Friends. So if you go to my page today, as of this moment, I would have 6,826 posts, which means I've met 6,826 people. And all of those people have agreed to spend an hour with me. So we'll set aside a time at a coffee shop, or now I'll do it through Zoom as well. So I'm sending calendar invites and blocking off that time. But a lot of it too, there was a street artist that I met early on, and he was like, well, I have to do this no parking garage sign or no parking sign on this garage. You can hang with me while I do this. So he was painting
Okay.
for most of our interaction together. But then I got to chat with him and I got to be present for his work. So sometimes it looks like that as well, where I'm just stepping into someone else's shoes for an hour. And that too is what I wanted to get out of the experience, was to get out of my own path a little bit and into other people's paths.
Wow. I think you answered the question. I was going to follow up and ask you about consent. So you do discuss this with people ahead of time. They know they're going to be part of this project. How does that conversation go? Have you ever had anybody say, absolutely not, I'm not going to be one of your 10K friends there, Rob?
Yeah, in the beginning, I mean, I worked in sales at the tech startup before doing this full time, and you're always asking people for their time in sales, and you get rejected often. So luckily, I had built up that thick skin before I approached this, and my whole mindset with the project too is like 10,000 people is such a small percentage of the overall world population
Right.
that not everyone has to say yes. And if people, I guess what's interesting is it's kind of like if you build it, they will come. And I set this goal, I started working towards it, and I was reaching out to a bunch of people, but eventually the script flipped where people started to reach out to me. And then it got to the point where I had like a waiting line of people that reached out to me. And then I didn't have enough time in the day to meet all the people that were reaching out to me at one time. So there was no longer the issue of me having to find people to meet and asking their consent, because they were excited about what I was doing and they wanted to be part of it. And it's kind of cool because it's going to take probably 7 more years to complete the journey, but I'm approaching the end. And once I cross 7,000, the window is starting to close. So it's like I honestly, I think I might be the only person in human history to intentionally sit down with 10,000 people one-on-one for 1 hour each. And it is all in all going to be like a 17-year project. So I don't know if anyone is going to come do this again. So for other people, it's just an opportunity to be part of something cool. And yeah, but before I meet with them, especially with Zoom, I record the conversations just to post a 60-second clip. It's not a podcast. It's not an interview. It's really just two people coming together to get to know each other. But I'll always ask people, hey, do you mind if I record this so I can just share that clip afterwards? And then the people who know my project know that I share what I learned of their story to my Instagram account. So
yeah, that is so cool. So you said it's going to be 17 years by the time you stop. Did you do the math ahead of time? What was your goal? How many years did you think it was going to take?
I thought it was going to take 5 to 10 years. And I think in the first few emails, I told people aggressively 4 years.
Okay.
So clearly I'm not good at math. I was not doing, but I thought and that's been interesting because other people, I can see how off they are on the calculations of how long it takes me. In COVID, for example, people started to see me posting all these virtual things. So they just assumed that I started the project during COVID. And they just told themselves that story. I'm sure people in your field know what it's like when people have misconceptions about the field or about the brand, whatever. And a lot of people would be like, oh, I know you started this in COVID because we couldn't meet each other. So this is really cool. And you're at 5,000 people in 2 years. I said, no, I've been doing this since 2015. So, but I had that misconception. I thought, take a 40-hour work week, 8 hours a day, 8 people a day. That did not take into account going to the bathroom, writing people's stories, traveling in between meetings, taking a lunch break. So now I try to move at a pace of 4 people a day.
Okay.
If I'm not traveling to speak.
Okay.
So and I'm saying 7 years because I'm 34 now.
Okay.
I think it'd be cool to finish by the time I'm 40. My birthday's in January, so I basically have 6 years and 9 months. I'll still be 40. So yeah, that's just kind of the unofficial goal right now. But to meet that, I would need to meet about 50 people a month from here on out.
That's incredible. So I'm so fascinated with this. This is one of the coolest things I promise you I've ever heard. So
Oh, thank you.
did you Get to 10. Where did the 10,000 number come from? Because I've seen it in Malcolm Gladwell's writing, because you become an expert in a
Sure.
particular field if you spend 10,000 hours with it. Was it influenced by that or something else? Where did you come up with this number?
Maybe subconsciously, I read that book, Outliers, in
Uh-huh.
college. But the initial goal was to meet 10,000 people for 10 minutes at a time in 1 year. And as you can imagine, that never would have worked. So it just sat as that idea for a year and a half until I matured a little bit. And then I thought, okay, I don't want to do this in a year. I actually want to take the time to get to know people. So when I pass them the next time, it's as a friend as opposed to a stranger. Like an hour is not enough to really understand someone's life, but it's enough to just scratch the surface. And I wanted to do that with people and to establish a connection with them. I would describe it more as Seth Godin has a book called The Purple Cow.
Yeah.
And he says, if you drive past a farm and you see a cow, you're not going to think twice. But if you drive past a farm and you see a purple cow, you're out, you're taking videos of it, you're uploading it to TikTok, Instagram, whatever. So how do you turn things purple? Like to meet a person is not anything crazy. To meet 100 people is really not anything crazy, but to meet 10,000 was my way of turning the concept purple, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I wanted to do something with connection that I could potentially turn into my career. A lot of times people ask me, oh, did you ever think it was going to get this big? Or did you ever think it could lead to this? And I'm thinking, it has not gotten nearly as big as I thought it could get. Otherwise, I wouldn't have dove into it full time as a career. So, yeah, it was just, I think, the thing that allowed it to intrigue people and to make it a challenge that was going to be further than the average person would go.
Okay. What are you learning about? So your number, in my notes, you were at 5,400 people. So you're now at 6,826 or 36. What's your number now?
I just met 6827.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what are you learning about human connection after 6,800, more than 6,800 intentional conversations with individuals out there?
Well, and I do talk about this in my talk, but I think there's an increased sense of belonging with everyone that you meet. Because when you meet someone, you turn on your awareness of that person. And what's important to them in a way becomes important to you. It's similar to when you buy a yellow car, you start to see yellow cars out on the road.
Right.
And I run into people from my project all the time, which is really great. I saw someone today in the coffee shop that I had met last year. So, and if I didn't meet him, he'd just be another strange face in the coffee shop. But because I met him, I'm like, oh, that's Charlie. I know him. He lives next door to me. And I know he lives in the neighborhood because we took the time to meet with each other. But you also start to understand that people have different experiences than you did. I think the first time I really felt that is when you went to college. I remember my roommates. I just came from a household, I guess our dishwasher wasn't the greatest. We would always wash the dishes before putting it in the
Yeah.
dishwasher. And my friends were like, why are you doing that? Just put the dish in the dishwasher. That's what it's for. They're like, well, that's what my mom did all the time.
Yeah.
So you start to realize, oh, people grew up differently than I did. And then you take that, extrapolate it with 6,800 people. And you start to understand, like, I just met with a woman who grew up in Latvia during the Soviet Union. She got expelled from school because she wanted to leave the country. She ended up in Israel and then came to the US. And she was telling me about how she lost her brother when she was 31 years old and how it was one of the most tragic things that ever happened in her life. I have two older siblings. My brother's 35, my sister's 39. And if I hear her story, I can contextualize that I'm very lucky that my brother has now made it 4 years beyond her brother. My sister has now made it 8 years beyond her brother. What a gift.
Mhm.
Whereas without that context, you might think, well, yeah, of course my siblings are alive. They're supposed to be alive. So when you have the reference points of other people's lives, it helps you contextualize your own. And it's where you get a lot of gratitude from. You start to realize, like, I've had all these gifts in my life. Let me be appreciative of them before they're gone. And then the other thing is it leads to new opportunities, whether it's for me speaking engagements that have come from people that I've met who I just tell them that's how I survive. And then they're like, oh, you should speak at this event. Or, for example, I met a flight attendant when I lived in Los Angeles, and he gave me his buddy pass to fly anywhere that Southwest flew. So 3 weeks later, I went to Maui, Hawaii, stayed at a cheap hostel there, met these two friends, this guy and this girl that were just traveling there that night, and we traveled the whole day, the next day together. This was in 2019. And then 2 years ago, they texted me and they said, "Hey, surprise, we got engaged." And I said, "Oh, that's great, congrats." And they said, "Yeah, we wanted to know if you would officiate our wedding." I said, "Yeah, sure." So I officiated their wedding last July in Sacramento. And it's just that adventure that came from meeting these people. So all those things come from connection. And I think the biggest thing I've learned is no one really knows what they're doing with their lives. Everyone's just doing the best they can with the resources that they have. And if you are pursuing something, which any of us are, I think it's very natural to go through cycles of confidence and doubt as a human. And understanding that so many other people are going through those cycles has made me more comfortable when I go through them myself.
Mhm.
I still have a lot of uncertainties and insecurities in my life. I still get up on stage and am terrified to speak. And I sometimes am terrified to have chats with people, but it doesn't mean that I don't do it. And when I understand that other people are pushing through their fears, it makes it easier for me to do that with mine. So that's many things, but those are a few different things that I've learned.
Yeah. Let's talk about the act of an intentional interaction, because that's what you said earlier was one of your goals of this project, is to really sit down with people and have an intentional interaction with them. I think we've all been in situations where we sit down with someone, we're talking to them, and now that we have these smart devices in our hands, they're looking at the device. You're looking at the top of their head. We hear that a lot in healthcare, where patients give feedback to physicians and other clinicians, and they're staring at the top of their head as they're typing into an iPad the whole time. And so you're losing some of that really human connection. So as we conclude here, what are some things people can do to really be intentional when they interact with someone?
I would say visualize their story. I say you can think about anyone's life like a timeline or like the plot of a movie, and you can tease out their story by just asking questions in the different facets of their life. So I have this friend framework, and it stands for family and relationships, industry, which is like your education into your career path, entertainment, which would be your hobbies outside of work, and needs and dreams. What are your dreams for the future and what do you need to get there? I oftentimes, when I meet people in person, I don't take notes. I don't do anything like that. And then I write these very detailed stories of them. And people are so surprised and they think it's such a skill. And I say, well, if you went and saw the Harry Potter movie,
Yeah.
you could tell me who the characters were in the movie. You could tell me where the film took place. You could tell me the evolution of the plot, what their challenges were, and what happened. I'm doing the same exact thing when I talk to people. And as I hear their story, I'm watching that movie. So then when it's time to retell it, I'm just retelling the movie that I just watched. And I think we all have that capability, but I think it's the practice that makes you better at it. And another thing for me is the act of writing people's stories afterwards. It forces you to be present. And I think for people who are running their own practices, like if you're trying to connect with your colleagues on a deeper level, or you want to increase the engagement and retention of your talent, I think everyone should take an hour to sit with their employees, listen, and then write their story back to them. Because when you write that story back to them, two things happen. One, it forces you to actively listen because you're kind of screwed if you don't listen. It's like
Yeah.
trying to take a test without ever reading the textbook. And two, when you can relay them information that they thought would have gone over your head, it creates a really special experience for them of being seen and heard. And I think those are really important things in today's work environment.
Yeah. Rob, if people listening are interested in the friendship framework, if they are interested in following your journey over the next 7 years, or maybe we'll
Yeah.
shave that down 6 years, 9 months so you can get there before you're 40,
Yeah.
how would they do that? Where do they go?
They can go to my Instagram, which is Rob's 10K Friends, and that's kind of always been the home of my project and my journey. where I take a picture with everyone, I share their story, and if anyone wants to meet with me, all they have to do is shoot me a message and say, hey, I'd like to be a part of your project, and we'll set up a time. And they don't need to be interesting. People always shoot me messages and say, I'd love to meet with you, but I'm not interesting like everyone else you're meeting. One, yes, you are. And two, I don't care if you're interesting or not. I'm not trying to meet interesting people. I'm trying to connect with other everyday people. So yeah, if they hear it, they're interested, please shoot me a message. I would love to meet with them.
Love that. Rob Lawless, thanks for joining us today, and thanks for this amazing project that you're involved in.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, and I'm very appreciative that I get to share my story. So thank you for the platform.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of MGMA Insights. We've been joined today by Rob Lawless, and we will put all those resources in our episode show notes. So you can just click right through and you can follow Rob's journey. And hopefully, if you're going to be at that MGMA Financial Conference, April 13th through the 15th in Washington, D.C., you can see Rob live and perhaps even be put into his Instagram feed. So until then, thank you all for being MGMA podcast listeners.